You don't build a nuclear reactor without getting a license. You don't build an AI system without getting a license that gets tested independently.
So this first clip was one of the clips of the first ever Senate hearing on artificial intelligence, which perfectly summarizes the entire Senate hearing, in my opinion, of May 16. Since the bottom line of this entire 3-hour hearing was that AI companies should be required to get a license before publishing AI tools. And no, not all companies should be required to get a license, only the big companies, according to Sam Altman.
The regulatory pressure should be on us. It should be on Google. It should be on the other small set of people in the lead the most. We don't want to slow down smaller startups. We don't want to slow down open source efforts. We still need them to comply with things. You can still cause great harm with a smaller model, but leaving the room and the space for new ideas and new companies and independent researchers to do their work, and not putting a regulatory burden that, say, a company like us could handle, but a smaller one couldn't.
So remember that this is the first AI hearing, but it will not be the last. So make sure to subscribe to receive my future summaries and not miss out, because my new YouTube channel will only produce in-depth quality AI content. At least that's the goal. So before we delve into the key takeaways of the hearing, let's address what Senate hearings are for those unfamiliar. So if you would like to skip this introduction and jump straight into my key takeaways, you can use the timestamps down below in the description. So what are these Senate hearings? So I've seen some headlines stating Sam Altman testifies before Congress. So during a congressional hearing, when Sam Altman testifies, it means he's sharing his expertise and opinions about the need for AI regulation with the members of Congress. So it does not imply any wrongdoing or defensive stance over here. So what was the goal of this Senate hearing about AI? So the Senate hearing aims to establish rules for responsible AI use. So that's the goal. So senators gather insights from these experts and witnesses to make informed decisions and create new laws or adapt old ones. So Senator Hawley mentions the open letter dated March 22, 2023, signed by over 27,000 individuals, including Elon Musk and Steve Wozniak from Apple, the co-founder of Apple. So the letter calls for a 6-month pause on training AI systems more powerful than GPT-4. So Senator Hawley questions whether this pause is necessary or not.
I noticed that an eclectic group of about 1,000 technology and AI leaders, everybody from Andrew Yang to Elon Musk, recently called for a 6-month moratorium on any further AI development. Were they right? Do you join those calls? Are they right to do that? Should we pause for 6 months?
So Sam's answer to this was that they aren't currently training GPT-5 and don't have any plans to do so for the upcoming 6 months.
Would you pause any further development for 6 months or longer?
So first of all, after we finished training GPT-4, we waited more than 6 months to deploy it. We are not currently training what will be GPT-5. We don't have plans to do it in the next 6 months. But I think the frame of the letter is wrong. What matters is audits, red teaming, safety standards that a model needs to pass before training. If we pause for 6 months, then I'm not sure what we do then. Do we pause for another 6? Do we kind of come up with some rules then? The standards that we have developed and that we've used for GPT-4 deployment, we want to build on those, but we think that's the right direction, not a calendar clock pause. There may be times, I expect there will be times, when we find something that we don't understand and we really do need to take a pause, but we don't see that yet.
So Senator Booker also had something to add to this, which was the following.
Yeah, there will be no pause. I mean, there's no enforcement body to force a pause. It's just not going to happen. It's nice to call for it for any just reasons or whatsoever, but forgive me for sounding skeptical. Nobody's pausing. This thing is racing.
I would agree. I don't think it's a realistic thing in the world. The reason I personally signed the letter was to call attention to how serious the problems were and to emphasize spending more of our efforts on trustworthy and safe AI rather than just making a bigger version of something we already know to be unreliable.
So circling back to the beginning of the hearing starts with Chairman Richard playing an AI-generated audio file of him talking. So although Richard was positively surprised by the quality and realness and actual content of what his AI version said, which was created by ChatGPT, he also showed his concerns.
What if I had asked it, and what if it had provided an endorsement of
Ukraine surrendering or Vladimir Putin's leadership.
So in other words, he's concerned about AI tools mimicking the voices of important people and then spreading fake messages around the web to influence other people. So he then continues by mentioning the potential harms these new AI tools can bring to the world.
Weaponized disinformation, housing discrimination, harassment of women and impersonation fraud, voice cloning, deep fakes. These are the potential risks despite the other rewards. And for me, perhaps the biggest nightmare is the looming new industrial revolution, the displacement of millions of workers, the loss of huge numbers of jobs, the need to prepare for this new industrial revolution in skill training and relocation that may be required.
So next up we have Senator Josh Hawley, who says the following.
It's really like the invention of the internet in scale, at least, and potentially far, far more significant than that. We could be looking at one of the most significant technological innovations in human history. And I think my question is, what kind of an innovation is it going to be? Is it going to be like the printing press that diffused knowledge and power and learning widely across the landscape, that empowered ordinary everyday individuals, that led to greater flourishing, that led above all to greater liberty? Or is it going to be more like the atom bomb? Huge technological breakthrough, but the consequences, severe, terrible, continue to haunt us to this day.
So now let's shift our attention to Sam's ideas regarding the regulations and policies that the government should consider. So in Sam's written testimony, which I'll link down below in the description, Sam summarizes what rules and policies the government should create. So number one, AI companies should follow safety rules. Companies working on powerful AI models must meet safety requirements before releasing their technology. So Sam believes the government should introduce licensing and registration rules for AI models with advanced capabilities. So number two, the second thing Sam suggests is that safety rules suggested in the first part should be flexible and able to keep up with new developments. So Sam continues by saying that the government should involve experts and organizations to create and update these safety standards, evaluation requirements, disclosure practices, and validation methods for AI systems. Then lastly, number three, the third thing Sam mentions in his written testimony is that AI development is not limited to one country. So it's important for policymakers to think about implementing regulations on a global scale. So international cooperation is necessary to ensure AI safety. So while many countries may be inclined to follow the United States, there is uncertainty about China's stance due to its ambition to become the AI leader.
And you also agree that China's doing AI research, is that right?
Correct.
This world organization that doesn't exist, maybe it will, but if you don't do something about the China part of it, you'll never quite get this right. Do you agree?
So during the later part of the hearing, Senator John Neely Kennedy posed a question to Sam and others, asking what reforms or regulations he would introduce if given the power to make decisions as a leader for one day, specifically in relation to AI, of course.
Please tell me in plain English 2 or 3 reforms, regulations, if any, that you would implement if you were queen or king for a day.
So I want to highlight Sam's response because it was very practical and worth sharing. So let's take a look.
Mr. Altman, here's your shot.
Thank you, Senator. Number one, I would form a new agency that licenses any effort above a certain scale of capabilities and can take that license away and ensure compliance with safety standards. Number two, I would create a set of safety standards focused on what you said in your third hypothesis as the dangerous capability evaluations. One example that we've used in the past is looking to see if a model can self-replicate and self-exfiltrate into the wild. We can give your office a long other list of the things that we think are important there, but specific tests that a model has to pass before it can be deployed into the world. And then third, I would require independent audits So not just from the company or the agency, but experts who can say the model is or isn't in compliance with these stated safety thresholds and these percentages of performance on question X or Y.
But now let's turn our attention to the insights of the two other experts at the hearing, so Gary and Christina. So first, we'll explore Christina's thoughts as she takes the stage and raises important questions. So let's listen to what she had to say.
AI is not new, but it's certainly having a moment. Recent breakthroughs in generative AI and the technology's dramatic surge in the public attention has rightfully raised serious questions at the heart of today's hearing. What are AI's potential impacts on society? What do we do about bias? What about misinformation, misuse, or harmful content generated by AI systems? Senators, these are the right questions, and I applaud you for convening today's hearing to address them head on.
So during the hearing, Christina from IBM raised 4 important questions that were not adequately addressed, in my opinion. So her responses were vague. However, reading a written 8-pager testimony clarifies IBM's perspective a bit more. So IBM suggests adopting a precision regulation approach, creating specific rules for different AI uses instead of regulating the technology itself. So stricter rules should be applied to riskier AI applications like credit or housing decisions. IBM also emphasizes the importance of transparency. Users should be informed if they are interacting with an AI system and should be aware of its development, performance, and training data. Furthermore, IBM recommends that companies using high-risk AI assess and demonstrate their system's performance in bias tests and ensure fairness across different groups. So lastly, we have Gary Marcus, an AI expert who founded Robust AI and Geometric AI, acquired by Uber. He also wrote a book called Rebooting AI. So Gary, who's not affiliated with OpenAI or AI tool developers, as far as my knowledge goes, emphasizes AI drawbacks, specifically ChatGPT software, and makes bold statements.
Fundamentally, these new systems are going to be destabilizing. They can and will create persuasive lies at a scale humanity has never seen before. Outsiders will use them to affect our elections, insiders to manipulate our markets and our political systems. Democracy itself is threatened. Chatbots will also clandestinely shape our opinions, potentially exceeding what social media can do. Choices about data sets that AI companies use will have enormous unseen influence. Those who choose the data will make the rules, shaping society in subtle but powerful ways.
Gary also refers to other negative news from the past few months, such as
a law professor, for example, was accused by a chatbot of sexual harassment, untrue. And it pointed to a Washington Post article that didn't even exist. Poor medical advice could have serious consequences too. An open source large language model recently seems to have played a role in a person's decision to take their own life. The large language model asked the human, if you wanted to die, why didn't you do it earlier? And then followed up with, were you thinking of me when you overdosed? Without ever referring the patient to the human help that was obviously needed. Another system rushed out and made available to millions of children told a person posing as a 13-year-old how to lie to her parents about a trip with a 31-year-old man.
So let's now discuss Senator Mary Marsha Blackburn. So Senator Blackburn raises an intriguing topic concerning OpenAI's Jukebox, a music-generating tool trained on a data set of 1.2 million songs, including 600,000 in English. So her comment revolves around the use of copyrighted music for training AI models.
And I want to come to you on music and content creation because we've got a lot of songwriters and artists, and I think we have the best creative community on the face of the earth there in Tennessee. And they should be able to decide if their copyrighted songs and images are going to be used to train these models. And I'm concerned about OpenAI's Jukebox. It offers some re-renditions in the style of Garth Brooks, which suggests that OpenAI is trained on Garth Brooks songs. I went in this weekend and I said, write me a song that sounds like Garth Brooks. And it gave me a different version of Simple Man. So it's interesting that it would do that, but you're training it on these copyrighted songs, these MIDI files, these sound technologies. So as you do this, who owns the rights to that AI-generated material? And using your technology, could I remake a song, insert content from my favorite artist, and then own the creative rights to that song?
Thank you, Senator. This is an area of great interest to us. I would say, first of all, we think that creators deserve control over how their creations are used and what happens sort of beyond the point of them releasing it into the world. Second, I think that we need to figure out new ways with this new technology that creators can win, succeed, have a vibrant life, and I'm optimistic that this will present it.
Then let me ask you this. How do you compensate the artist?
But she's not done with her bold question. So here comes another one, which I do find a great question.
Can you commit, as you've done with consumer data, not to train ChatGPT, OpenAI, Jukebox, or other AI models on artists and songwriters' copyrighted works, or use their voices and their likenesses without first receiving their consent?
So Sam doesn't explicitly address the question of whether he will refrain from training AI models on artists' data without consent. So while Sam agrees artists should benefit from these AI tools, he doesn't provide specific details, leaving it somewhat vague. It might be worth considering, in my opinion, that artists often find inspiration from other works when creating their own. So for example, J.K. Rowling drew ideas from various sources for the Harry Potter series, including books, myths, and real-life experience. So this raises the question of whether there is a parallel between AI tools drawing inspiration and creating something new, and individuals, people finding inspiration and creating unique works. I'm curious to hear your opinion on this matter. What are your thoughts? So then we have the Minnesota senator asking how OpenAI plans to deal with local newspapers. She refers to a study published in October 2022 that on average 2 newspapers are disappearing daily. So she then continues that because of the launch of ChatGPT, she believes it will go even quicker.
And so my question is, when we already have a study by Northwestern predicting that 1/3 of the U.S. newspapers that roughly existed 2 decades are going to be gone by 2025. Unless you start compensating for everything from movies, books, yes, but also news content, we're going to lose any realistic content producers. And so I'd like your response to that. And of course, there is an exemption for copyright in Section 230, but I think asking little newspapers to go out and sue all the time just can't be the answer. They're not going to be able to keep up.
Yeah, it is my hope that tools like what we're creating can help news organizations do better. I think having a vibrant national media is critically important, and let's call it round 1 of the internet has not been great for that.
Right. We're talking here about local, that, report on your high school football scores and a scandal in your city council, those kinds of things.
For sure.
They're the ones that are actually getting the worst, the little radio stations and broadcast. But do you understand that this could be exponentially worse in terms of local news content if they're not compensated?
Well,
because what they need is to be compensated for their content and not have it stolen.
So Senator Lindsey Olin Graham posed some practical questions to the 3 witnesses, Sam, Gary, and Christina from IBM, seeking straightforward yes or no answers. So his 2 questions were, the first one, should AI companies need to have a license for creating AI tools? And secondly, should there be an agency overseeing companies that create AI tools? So both Sam and Gary agreed with these propositions, while Christina from IBM disagreed.
So what I'm trying to do is make sure that you just can't go build a nuclear power plant. Hey, Bob, what would you like to do today? Let's go build a nuclear power plant. You have a Nuclear Regulatory Commission that governs how you build a plant and is licensed. Do you agree, Mr. Altman, that these tools you're creating should be licensed?
Yeah, we've been calling for this. We think
That's the simplest way. You get a license. And do you agree with me that the simplest way and the most effective way is have an agency that is more nimble and smarter than Congress, which should be easy to create, overlooking what you do?
Yes, we'd be enthusiastic about that.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Marcus?
Absolutely.
Do you agree with that, Ms. Montgomery?
I would have some nuances. I think we need to build on what we have in place already today.
We don't have an agency
Regulators.
that's working. Wait a minute. Nope.
We don't have an agency that regulates the technology.
So should we have one?
But a lot of the issues, I don't think so. A lot of the issues.
Okay, wait a minute. So IBM says we don't need an agency. Interesting. Should we have a license required for these tools?
So what we believe is that we need to regulate.
That's a simple question. Should you get a license to produce one of these tools?
I think it comes back to some of them potentially yes. So what I said at the onset is that we need to clearly define risks.
Do you claim Section 230 applies in this area at all?
We're not a platform company, and we've, again, long advocated for a reasonable care standard in Section 230.
I just don't understand how you could say that you don't need an agency to deal with the most transformative technology maybe ever?
Well, I think we have existing...
Is this a transformative technology that can disrupt
absolutely.
Life as we know it, good and bad?
I think it's a transformative technology, certainly. And the conversations that we're having here today have been really bringing to light the fact that the domains and the issues...
This one with you has been very enlightening to me. Mr. Altman, why are you so willing to have an agency?
Senator, we've been clear about what we think the upsides are, and I think you can see from users how much they enjoy and how much value they're getting out of it, but we've also been clear about what the downsides are, and so that's why we think we need an agency.
So it's a major tool to be used by a lot of people,
It's a major new technology.
Okay, if you make a ladder and the ladder doesn't work, you can sue the people that made the ladder, but there's some standards out there to make a ladder. So
that's why we're agreeing with you.
Yeah, that's right. I think you're on the right track. So here's what my 2 cents worth for the committee is that we need to empower an agency that issues a license and can take it away. Wouldn't that be some incentive to do it right if you could actually be taken out of business?
Clearly, that should be part of what an agency can do.
Now,
So Senator Graham continues by asking another question related to AI and wars. So his specific question refers to whether a drone can make its own decisions with AI tools. In other words, can it select its target by itself?
you can plug into a drone the coordinates and it can fly out and it goes over this target and it drops a missile on this car moving down the road and somebody's watching it. Could AI create a situation where a drone can select the target itself?
I think we shouldn't allow that.
Well, can it be done?
Sure.
Thanks.
So then we move on to Senator John Neely Kennedy, who offered Sam Altman a job as the head of the agency to check upon AI companies to administer these rules they are creating. And this was Sam's response.
Would you be qualified to if we promulgated those rules, to administer those rules?
I love my current job.
Cool. Are there people out there that would be qualified?
We'd be happy to send you recommendations for people out there, yes.
Okay.
So I believe Senator John thinks that one of the reasons Sam isn't interested in the job is because he makes a lot of money, resulting in John asking him the following question.
You make a lot of money, do you?
I'm paid enough for health insurance. I have no equity in OpenAI.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You need a lawyer.
I need a what?
You need a lawyer or an agent.
I'm doing this because I love it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So apparently Sam doesn't have any equity in the business he's in. In other words, when OpenAI becomes extremely successful, Sam doesn't directly become wealthier than he is now, with the emphasis on than he is now because he is already extremely wealthy because of the investments he made in all the companies he is invested in. Now let's focus our attention on Senator John, who asked a really good question in my opinion. So he wants to have a clear understanding before creating new laws and regulations what they are actually regulating. So he then asks Sam Altman to provide some insights on what exactly would be subject to regulation in this context.
If we're going to contemplate a regulatory framework, we're going to have to define what it is that we're regulating. So Mr. Altman, any such law will have to include a section that defines the scope of regulated activities, technologies, tools, products. Just take a stab at it.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Senator Ossoff. I think it's super important. I think there are very different levels here, and I think it's important that any any new approach, any new law does not stop the innovation from happening with smaller companies, open source models, researchers that are doing work at a smaller scale. That's a wonderful part of this ecosystem and of America, and we don't want to slow that down. There still may need to be some rules there, but I think we could draw a line at systems that need to be licensed in a very intense way. The easiest way to do it, I'm not sure if it's the best, but the easiest would be to talk about the amount of compute that goes into such a model. So we could, define a threshold of compute, and it'll have to change. It could go up or down. Down as we discover more efficient algorithms that says above this amount of compute, you are in this regime. What I would prefer, it's harder to do, but I think more accurate, is to define some capability thresholds and say a model that can do things X, Y, and Z, up to you all to decide, that's now in this licensing regime, but models that are less capable, we don't want to stop our open source community, we don't want to stop individual researchers, we don't want to stop new startups, can proceed, with a different framework.
Thank you. As concisely as you can, please state which capabilities you'd propose we consider for the purposes of this definition.
I would love, rather than to do that off the cuff, to follow up with your office with
perhaps opine, understanding that you're just responding and you're not making law.
All right. In the spirit of just opining, I think a model that can persuade, manipulate, influence a person's behavior or a person's beliefs, that would be a good threshold. I think a model that could help create novel biological agents would be a great threshold. Okay. Things like that.
If you like these AI summaries, make sure to subscribe to the channel because I plan to upload many more of these AI videos. See you next time. Bye-bye.